Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another edition of Alive with Clive, turning your passion into profit. My name is Clive Swirsky, and I'm very pleased today to have as my special guest Michael Shilale. Michael Shilale is an amazing architect. He is at the forefront of a new movement of green technology, and I noticed one of his blog posts the other day. He's on the cutting edge, and we're going to find out everything there is to know about what architects can do to make sure that the buildings they design are environmentally friendly. Now, for my words of wisdom for today, I want to mention again that about 3 years ago, I interviewed an author on this show by the name of Clint Wilder. He co-authored a book called The Clean Tech Revolution. And in this book, they talk about 8 different technologies: solar power, wind power, biofuels and biomaterials, green buildings, fuel-efficient cars, a smart energy grid, mobile technology, and turning water into water that is drinkable for the world's populations. All those different technologies. And that was at a time when the world was just beginning to focus on this whole area, because people are starting to realize that if we don't take good care of the planet won't be able to take good care of us. So I've become interested in this whole realm, this whole subject, and so when I noticed this newsletter from Michael, I was intrigued because he had incorporated designing buildings with solar energy, and he really is at the forefront of all the technology that is helping us to take better care of the planet. So I'm now going to ask Michael some questions so you can get a better sense of what is possible and what is available for us in the years ahead. So Michael, welcome. Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Clive. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Now, you, as I said, are really at the forefront of this movement. How come you decided to take this on in your architectural practice?
Well, when I was in school about 30 years ago, Clive, I was in an environmental ethics class, and well before this recent focus on sustainability, but certainly after the first Earth Day in 1970, and this was about 10 years later than that. And our professors would talk about the responsibility architects have to create an environment that harmonizes with nature, that doesn't harm the planet, and still provides an opportunity for people to live, learn, work, and play in our places and spaces that we create. And so there's a social responsibility to architecture. And if you were to fast forward about 7 or 8 years ago, I ran into a man called Ed Masria, who's an architect out of Arizona, I believe. And he talks about what buildings can do in terms of a very hopeful thing. One of the things we learn is that most of our environmental problems are caused by buildings. Over 75% of the electricity that we have to generate in this country is used up by buildings. Over 40% of the materials that we put into our landfills come from buildings. Almost 50% of the carbon dioxide that we produce, that many believe helps cause global warming or climate change, is produced by buildings. So as an architect, I feel personally responsible for some of the environmental challenges that we have. And if you read Tom Friedman's book, Hot, Flat, and Crowded, that our energy dependence on foreign oil and other things is not only a problem for us, but it's even an instrument of oppression for many of those non-democratic states that we funnel all that money to and allow them to sustain themselves in those bad situations. So as an architect, I feel, well, if we're going to be some of the primary culprits to our global challenges, we should be part of the solution. And there are many opportunities out there for buildings to make a significant difference. In fact, Ed Masria talks about a 2030 challenge and says that in the next 20 or so years, almost 3/4 of our buildings will be either substantially renovated or brand new. So if our buildings are using up all of these natural resources, there's an opportunity now to rethink the way we build and design our buildings to be more environmentally friendly and more sustainable.
Wow, so he actually can foresee that within the next 20 years such a major shift can occur?
Oh, absolutely. And many communities have signed on. It's called the 2030 Challenge. You can get it on a website called architecture2030.org. The United States Council of Mayors have signed on to this challenge. Many communities in our area have said, yes, we're going to sign on to this challenge, and they talk about each decade making significant improvements in the amount of energy that our buildings use, to reduce that, to reduce the amount of water that we use. Every year, and just in our country alone, we take out 3,700 billion gallons of water out of our aquifers, more than we put back in to recharge. So it's not just energy, it's our water resources, it's our sustainable sites, the way we build and the way we treat our landscape. It takes about 600 years to create 1 inch of soil. And many of our construction sites, if you've seen what they look like, we lose that topsoil just in a rainfall because we've stripped the sites bare of the vegetation and we don't protect that soil. So whether it's energy or soil or water resources or materials, we need to rethink and redesign the way we build our buildings and communities.
Now it occurs to me that you are an expert in this area.
I believe that there's not many architects who are doing what we're doing. Over 5 years ago, I received a LEED accreditation, which is a sort of a rating system for buildings and sites and communities that can tell us whether or not we have a green building or not. There's so much what we call greenwashing out there that sometimes it's difficult to know how sustainable your building or your building materials are. So there's some very good rating systems that measure the whether you call it the embodied energy or the life cycle cost of a material, because sometimes a material may seem sustainable, but the amount of natural resources that get consumed to create that material is really damaging to our environment, and those costs are not really seen. So there's a lot of measurements out there that help us build better buildings and build more sustainable buildings. And so a lot of our projects will bring that, even if a client's not saying they want a green building. We're doing a window replacement job for a local school, and we had to look to Canada to find some very high performing windows because they really need it up there and they're not very easily attainable here in the States. And so we're kind of bring some fiberglass windows, which is a newer technology for this country, with some real high-performing glass. They're doing it actually in the Empire State Building. They're replacing all of the glass in the Empire State Building. And the cost of that renovation is paid for totally by the energy savings. And that's a strategy we use in a lot of our projects, that many of our buildings waste so much energy that just by retrofitting them in a more energy efficient way, you can actually pay for those retrofits over a period of time. So we have 2 school districts that are engaged in $10 million of capital improvements that are all paid for by the energy savings. It's really a wonderful option, especially in these economic times when you can't go to taxpayers for new boilers or new roofs or new windows or new lighting. By going with some higher performance products and systems there, it really pays for itself in a short amount of time often.
Now, are you describing mainly using solar panels in these buildings to get the energy from the sun?
Well, that's just one technology.
Yeah.
There's dozens of different technologies and different ways to make your building more energy efficient. Certainly, solar panels are our best bet at meeting our energy needs long term. The sun puts out 800 terawatts or 800 trillion watts every day onto the planet. It's the only source of energy that really is truly renewable and not harmful to our environment, and we need to do better at that. We have solar panels on a lot of our projects, on our own building, but there's so many other things you can do to make your building more energy efficient. Lighting is a major utilization of